Zhou Wen rushed in front of a military officer and asked, "How long have you been here? How many spider balls have landed here?" "We've been here for nearly an hour. We saw a total of 3 spider balls landing near the Duke of Zhou Temple," the officer answered. "The 3 spider balls can't have that many spiders. Have you sent someone to charge in to take a look?" Zhou Wen asked again. As the officer fired, he shouted, "We also suspect that there's something wrong inside, but there are too many spiders. We can't charge in. We've tried but suffered heavy casualties. There's no point in this endless killing. Zhou Wen and Zia, charge in with me to take a look," Hui Haifeng said as he charged towards the group of spiders with his shield. His charge was extremely ferocious, but he was quickly stuck by a spider web and could no longer break through. Zhou Wen and Zhang Zia charged over and sliced the spider web in front of them with their saber and sword. There were a few students standing behind them. They huddled into a group as they charged in, fighting ceaselessly against the tidal wave of spiders. A few drops of blood landed on Zhou Wen's face. They were from Hui Haifeng. A strand of spider silk had swept across his face, leaving a bloody mark. The temple was in front of them, but they couldn't see the main body of the temple at all. It was completely covered by the spiderwebs as if it was covered in snow. Zhou Wen and company could see large numbers of spiders crawling out of the spiderwebs without stopping. There must be something wrong with the temple. Otherwise, how can there be so many spiders crawling out from such a tiny place? Zhang Zia said. The webs have sealed off the area. If we head in, just making contact with a few spiderwebs will trap us. When that happens, we won't even have a chance to hide, a student said. Let us rush in and take a look. Help us watch our backs. 2 military officers rushed into the temple. Zhou Wen and company tried their best to block the surrounding spiders as the 2 officers entered one after another. Not long after they entered, they heard a scream as another officer flew out. What happened? Zhou Wen caught the officer and asked anxiously. There are too many webs in there. There's no room for movement at all. You'll get stuck with any slight movement. The 3rd platoon commander, the officer's eyes were red and he couldn't continue speaking. He got up and wanted to rush towards the temple again. Don't go, it's useless even if you go. The spiderwebs are like a lair. Anyone who goes in will die unless it's an epic expert who forcefully tears through those webs. Zhang Zia held the officer down and prevented him from entering. If we don't resolve the problem here, the spiders will rush out like a tidal wave. There's no way we can defend our ground. When the time comes, the entire Luang city will be finished. The red-eyed officer struggled out of Zhang Zia's grasp as he tried to charge inside. Everyone fell silent. They naturally knew that it was impossible for such a small group of people to fend off so many spiders unless an epic expert came. But right now, the epic experts were attacking the sky spider, so how could they come here to support them? I hate these fellows who risk their lives for no good reason. It's as if everything can be resolved as long as they are willing to risk their lives. Zhang Zia pursed his lips disdainfully and continued, "Please help me watch the area outside. I'll go in and take a look." As he spoke, Zhang Zia raised his sword and leapt over the officer before entering the opening. "Zia, I'll go in with you." Hui Haifeng pushed away the spider in front of him and entered the lair-like temple. "Stay outside for now. Before we come out, you must hold the ground no matter what. Don't let the spider swarm spread out," Zhou Wen said to the officer as he rushed into the temple. The spider web wrapped around the doors and walls like yarn. Mere contact would cause the spider silk to cling onto them like death's grip. When the time came, they wouldn't be able to break free, making dodging the spider's attack extremely difficult. They would then be like a fly caught in a spider's web. When Zhou Wen rushed in, he saw that the ground was covered in spiderwebs and that if his feet were to touch the ground, he would likely be stuck to it. However, he wasn't flustered. He circulated the ancient sovereign sutra and slashed out with his primordial energy. Immediately, he tore open the spiderweb in front of him and his legs landed on the ground. The moment his feet touched the spider silk, it immediately melted like snow meeting embers. It failed to stick to Zhou Wen's body. When Zhou Wen was outside, he had already tried all sorts of primordial energy arts and discovered that the ancient sovereign sutra was highly effective against spider silk. When they encountered the ancient sovereign sutra's primordial energy, they would immediately melt. This was why he dared to barge in. He hadn't gone far before he saw Hui Haifeng's body covered with spiderwebs. He resembled a dumpling wrapped in white silk. However, he could still charge forward. The nearby spiders who had crawled out failed to hurt him due to the spider silk that formed a protective net. Zhou Wen scrutinized Hui Haifeng and realized that the spider silk on him had clearly been put on by him. It wasn't connected to the spider silk outside. Although he looked terrifying, he was still able to move freely. That's a good move. How did you think of that? Zhou Wen charged over and rendezvoused with Hui Haifeng, killing all the incoming spiders. Hui Haifeng said, "These spider silk threads look scary, but if you take a closer look, you'll see that there are actually 2 types. One is a sticky kind of spider silk, the other is a type that doesn't stick. Those spiders are also walking on the non-sticky spider silk, so I use those as a form of protection. The non-stick spider silk helps against the other kind of spider silk, so it prevents me from being stuck." With that said, Hui Haifeng sized up Zhou Wen from head to toe. "Dude, how did you get in? You weren't stuck by the spider webs?" "My strength perfectly counters these spider silk threads. They can't stick to me. Zhou Wen asked again, where's Zia? He rushed to the front. He's too fast and I can't catch up with him. I reckon he should already be in the main hall of the temple by now, Hui Haifeng said. Then take your time. I'll head in and take a look as well. As Zhou Wen spoke, he used his bamboo blade to storm open a bloody path and charged into the Duke of Zhou temple. Wait for me. Hui Haifeng rushed in with Zhou Wen. However, because he was covered in spider webs that made him look like a snowman, his actions appeared somewhat clumsy. The bamboo blade was extremely sharp, and with Zhou Wen's ancient sovereign sutra's primordial energy, it was the nemesis of the spiders. Wherever the blade passed, the spider webs and spiders were sliced apart. The two of them charged forward and killed countless spiders. An intense battle sounded in front of him as Zhou Wen hurriedly called out to Zia. He immediately heard Zhang Zia's voice, I'm here. Quick, help me. This fellow is a tough one. Article 242 of 1597. Zhou Wen heard the sound coming from the backyard, but it was already covered in beads of silk like a snow cave. Truth Listener's ability allowed Zhou Wen to see what was happening inside. Zhang Zia was fighting a group of spiders, and in the yard, there was something like a well. Spiders were pouring out of it, and clearly, that was the problem. I'll be right there. As Zhou Wen spoke, he circled around to the backyard. Indeed, he saw Zhang Zia embroiled in a battle with a horde of spiders. He didn't have any spider webs on him, and his powers were clearly unable to restrain the spider silk like Zhou Wen's. However, his movement technique was extremely odd. He was like a boneless snake as he swam through the silk, preventing it from sticking to him. Zhou Wen took a closer look and realized that when Zhang Zia's body touched a strand of silk, he would land on the non-sticky spider silk. The spiders could do nothing about him. However, Zhang Zia wasn't in the best of conditions. Although normal spiders couldn't do anything to him, there was a very strange spider that left him in peril. The spider was also snow white in color, but on its back was a unique blood red pattern. The pattern looked like a human face, making it stand out among a group of snow white spiders. The blood-patterned spider kept darting through the horde of spiders to avoid being attacked by Zhang Zia. Zhang Zia had been pursuing it the entire time, but there was something that left Zhou Wen somewhat puzzled. When the blood-patterned spider burrowed into the pile of spiders, Zhang Zia would lose his target. When he saw it again, he failed to recognize it immediately. Zia, what's the situation now? Hui Haifeng noticed something amiss as well and hurriedly asked. That spider is the problem. Quickly kill it, Zhang Zia said. I see, but why does it look like you don't want to kill it? Hui Haifeng said as he rushed over. If I could recognize it, I would have killed it long ago. It's very cunning. It's always burrowing into the spider horde and mixing with other spiders. It takes me a while to determine which one it is, Zhang Zia said. It can't be, can't you see the blood-colored patterns on its back? Hui Haifeng asked, puzzled. I'm colorblind and particularly can't identify red. Zhang Zia's answer nearly caused Zhou Wen and Hui Haifeng's jaws to drop to the ground. If it weren't for this critical moment, they would never have believed that such a strange illness existed in this world. Hui Haifeng charged forward and punched the blood-patterned spider. It moved at rapid speed, allowing it to easily dodge Hui Haifeng's attack. Speed wasn't Hui Haifeng's forte to begin with, so now that he was wrapped in spider silk, he became even clumsier. He ultimately failed to catch up to the blood-patterned spider, but he did kill several ordinary spiders. Without another word, Zhou Wen used ghost steps and charged forward as though he had teleported. The bamboo blade cleaved the blood-patterned spider into two. Unlike the other spiders, once the blood-patterned spider died, it didn't reduce to dust. It was actually a true body of flesh and blood. What's going on? Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. He thought that all the spiders were puppets, but this one was clearly not. The moment the blood-patterned spider died, the underground well exploded and large amounts of white liquid spewed out. After that, no spiders crawled out. When Zhou Wen and company had slaughtered all the spiders, he walked to the well and saw that it was only a few meters deep. It resembled a huge pot, so he couldn't work out how that many spiders managed to crawl out of it. The military was firing wildly outside and killing the spiders that crawled out earlier. However, the effects were getting worse. Quite a number of soldiers were hung up by the spider silk, and some of them even had their bodies snapped into two by it. Despite almost failing to hold the defensive line, the significant drop in spiders that crawled out of the temple allowed them to gradually stabilize the situation. They succeeded. The officer in charge was surprised and delighted. He ordered the soldiers to increase their firepower and quickly eliminate all the spiders. By the time Zhou Wen and company came out, most of the spiders outside had already been killed by the troops and other students who had rushed over to reinforce them. Students, thank you for everything you've done. The officer was about to say something when he suddenly received an urgent notification. There was another spot in the city where another spider horde had gathered. The troops there were asking for reinforcements. Students, if it's possible, can I ask you to come with us? The officer said in embarrassment. How troublesome. Where is it? Zhang Zia asked. Hence, Zhou Wen and company became an emergency team that was made to put out fires. They constantly shuttled through the city, in charge of clearing locations that constantly produced spiders. There were more than 10 places like this in Luang City. And these were the discovered ones. It was unknown how many in the suburbs had yet to be discovered. The three of them should have split up and gone to different locations, but Hui Haifeng couldn't catch up with the blood-patterned spider and Zhang Zia was colorblind, so they had no choice but to rush over together. Thankfully, with the two of them opening up a path, all Zhou Wen needed to do was focus on killing the blood-patterned spider. The effects had increased significantly. After killing a few blood-patterned spiders, Zhou Wen discovered a companion egg inside a blood-patterned spider's body. Zhou Wen glanced at it with his mysterious phone. Sky spider larva, legendary, youngling. Life providence, son of the sky. Strength, 19. Speed, 20. Constitution, 17. Primordial energy, 20. Talent skill, sky spider silk, sky spider sanguine venom. Companion form, sky spider glove. Zhou Wen knew what was going on when he saw the annotation of a youngling. Typical companion beasts didn't have any room for growth. Legendaries were legendaries, impossible for them to further evolve. However, with the youngling annotation, it meant that there was still room for growth. As for the level of advancement after becoming an adult, that depended on its bloodline. Since it was a youngling of a sky spider, it would probably grow into existence like the sky spider in the sky. The three of them continuously moved to help the military kill the sky spider younglings. Many officers recognized them, but they didn't know their names. Zhou Wen and company had killed another sky spider youngling and were rushing to the next location when they suddenly saw the sky light up. It was daytime with the blazing sun high in the sky, but the radiance was even more dazzling than the sun. The trio couldn't help but look up. They saw a brilliant sword flash sweep across the sky as though it had swept across the entire horizon. The gigantic sky spider was instantly killed. The sky spider had been sliced in half and fell from the sky. It was unknown where it landed, but it caused the entire city to experience tremors for a moment like an earthquake. Zhou Wen looked up into the sky. At the spot where the sword beam disappeared, a man in an officer's uniform and trench coat stood in midair like a god of war. And Tianzuo? Although he couldn't see in Tianzuo's face due to the distance, the latter's figure immediately made him recall in Tianzuo. Article 243 of 1597. The calamity of the sky spider was finally over. The damaged city could be repaired, but the dead would never come back to life. Bury our brothers who died properly. Arrange to disperse the bereavement money as quickly as possible. Make sure that not a single cent goes astray. Also, if they have any problems at home, do your best to take care of them. We can't let their family cry while our brothers are bleeding. And Tianzuo sat behind his desk as he looked at the list of casualties Sheng had brought over. His expression wasn't the best. He had said that he wanted to protect Luang, but today, Luang City nearly became a ruin. Everything has been arranged. Do you want to attend their funeral personally? And Sheng asked. Yes. And Tianzuo nodded with a heavy expression. Also, this is the list of those who contributed from below. Most of them are fine, but since many students from Sunset College had participated in the battle, our subordinates have also submitted their names. 3 of them were personally added by Deputy Governor Qin, but Sheng paused for a moment. But what? And Tianzuo asked. Those 3 students didn't report to the military headquarters for registration, so they don't know their names. Deputy Governor Qin only mentioned 3 students, but didn't write their names, Sheng said. Since they didn't head for the military headquarters, it means that they don't care about the rewards. They likely come from the big and powerful families. It's fine if they didn't register, but why would Uncle Qin especially highlight them? There should be some reason for this, right? And Tianzuo said thoughtfully. Overseer, you're wise. These 3 students helped our troops destroy 16 spider wells, significantly reducing our casualties. The officers below wish to report their names, but they don't know them. Deputy Governor Qin especially highlighted them after learning of the matter. I believe he hopes we can find out who they are and give them the commendations that they deserve, Sheng said. There aren't many youths these days who are so responsible. Such acts are indeed worthy of commendation. Find them and hold a commendation ceremony at Sunset College. I want to personally award them a reward and set them as a classic example. And Tianzuo nodded slightly when he heard that. Yes, Overseer, Sheng replied. He took note of this matter and went to settle it after he was done with his other more pressing issues. The two clearly didn't realize that Zhou Wen was one of the 3. This was because, from their understanding of him, Zhou Wen was clearly not someone who was willing to take risks. To be able to do such a thing as venturing deep into the spider's lair was definitely an action a hot-blooded youth would take. And Zhou Wen's character was clearly not one. When Zhou Wen returned to his dorm, the shocking sword beam from Tianzuo still appeared in his mind from time to time. From the looks of it, I'm still very far from Tianzuo. It's no wonder Lance said that he wants to advance to the peak of the epic stage before challenging Tianzuo. That does make sense. Zhou Wen also hoped that he could reach that level one day. Of course, thinking about it was useless. Therefore, Zhou Wen took out his mysterious phone and planned on continuing to enter the game to hunt monsters so that he could quickly increase his strength. Before Zhou Wen could enter the instant's dungeon, the antelope came over to tug at his clothes. Zhou Wen knew that it wanted to eat again, so he took out the soy sauce beef he had placed in the chaos space. When he picked up the soy sauce beef, Zhou Wen saw a necklace beside it. Only then did he recall that he had snatched the necklace from John. John was immune to the Grand Yin Wind from Banana Fairy because he was wearing the necklace. Although it was because the level of the Banana Fairy was still low, it was undeniable that the power of the necklace gave him a strong resistance against the wind element. However, Luong basically didn't have any wind elemental dimensional creatures. It hadn't come in handy after Zhou Wen had received the necklace. He took it out and saw that the gems embedded in it seemed to have a swirling vortex within. It was rather magical. Banana Fairy, who was flying around on a banana leaf, flew over when she saw the goddess of wind's protection. She landed on Zhou Wen's hand that was holding the necklace. She looked pitifully at Zhou Wen with her large eyes, her mouth producing a voice that Zhou Wen couldn't understand. It was unknown what she wanted to say. "You want this necklace?" Zhou Wen asked Banana Fairy. Banana Fairy hurriedly nodded as she looked at Zhou Wen with anticipation. "What do you want it for? You can't wear such a huge necklace. You can't treat it like a snack, right?" Zhou Wen casually asked. However, just as Zhou Wen finished his sentence, Banana Fairy grabbed the gem on the necklace and bit down. The stone that seemed to have wind flowing within was devoured by her. Hey. I was just making a remark. Why did you really eat it?" Zhou Wen's heart ached. This item was a treasure that could make him immune to wind-based attacks. Zhou Wen was prepared to take it to Sky City. Sky City was mostly filled with wind elemental creatures. With this necklace, Zhou Wen could kill dimensional creatures there without any worries. Now that Banana Fairy had swallowed the gem, he didn't know if the necklace had any effect. However, the Banana Fairy looked at Zhou Wen with a puzzled expression. She didn't quite understand why Zhou Wen was acting so sad even though he was the one who had asked her to eat it. However, this expression didn't last long. After swallowing the gem, wisps of wind gushed out from Banana Fairy's body. The wind turned into something visible to the naked eye as it spun around Banana Fairy and the banana leaf. Furthermore, the wind was getting stronger and stronger as it gradually formed a storm. The tables and chairs in the room were all swept up. If this continued, the entire building would probably be swept up by her. Zhou Wen hurriedly stowed away Banana Fairy into the chaos space as he wondered in surprise, could it be that Banana Fairy is going to evolve? She's already at the legendary stage. If she continues to evolve, wouldn't she be at the epic stage? The hurricane in the chaos space continued as Zhou Wen's consciousness entered. All he saw was a heavenly pillar-like hurricane swirling, preventing him from seeing Banana Fairy's figure. The storm was getting more intense, and it didn't seem like it would stop anytime soon. Seeing the mess in the room, Zhou Wen couldn't help but shake his head slightly. He began packing up the items on the ground, and just as he was done packing, he heard his cell phone ring. "Little Wen, let me ask you something. Did my father ever give you anything special?" Ouyang Lan's voice came through the phone. "I used to eat at the former principal's place often, but it seems like he never gave me anything." "Sis Lan, has something happened?" Zhou Wen noticed that Ouyang Lan's tone was somewhat odd. "We've established contact with the expedition team and they said that they lost contact with my father. I plan on making a trip to Zuolu myself to figure out the situation. During my absence, you have to take good care of yourself. If there's anything you need, find in Sheng. He will help you." Ouyang Lan said a few simple words and hung up before Zhou Wen could ask about the situation. Article 244 of 1597. Zhou Wen hurriedly called back, wanting to meet Ouyang Lan and tell her about the name card and number. However, it wasn't convenient to call her over the phone. It could be troublesome if the call was monitored. However, when Zhou Wen called, he heard the notification that the person he had just called had switched off their phone. He thought for a moment before calling in Sheng. Thankfully, in Sheng's call went through successfully. "And Sheng, I called Sis Lan just now. Why is her phone switched off?" Zhou Wen asked. "Madam has already set off. She left in a hurry, so she didn't take any detours. She's flying straight to Zuolu County. On the way, she will pass through many areas with abnormal magnetic fields. It'll probably be very difficult to contact her on her phone," and Sheng said. "What happened? Why did Sis Lan leave in such a hurry?" Zhou Wen frowned slightly. "We aren't sure of the actual situation. All we know now is that one of the people who went to the dimensional zone for research with Mr. Ouyang has returned. He said that some accidents happened in the dimensional zones. They were separated from Mr. Ouyang and many of them died. Only he escaped alive. Later, they sent a few more groups of people in, but the outcome was terrible, many people died. Madam was really worried, so she went alone. Overseer couldn't stop her, so he rushed people over. You don't have to be worried. And Sheng, can you take me along? I also want to go to Zuolu," Zhou Wen asked after some thought. There weren't many people in this world who didn't ask for anything in return. The former principal was one of them. Although Zhou Wen was a rather cold and aloof person, he wished to do something for the former principal. Zhou Wen knew that he was lacking, so it was useless entering the dimensional zone. However, he had the mysterious phone. If he could find the tiny palm symbol there, he could explore the dimensional zone in the game's instance dungeon and learn of the dangers ahead of time. It might be of help to the former principal. That ancient battlefield is extremely terrifying. Previously, those who entered with the principal were all experts at the epic stage. Even so, only one of them survived. It's useless for the average person to go. Don't worry, we will do our best to save old Mr. Ouyang, and Sheng said. I don't feel at ease staying here either. I wish to wait at Zuolu so that I can immediately learn the latest news about the former principal and Sis Lan, Zhou Wen said. And Sheng hesitated for a moment before saying, the first group of people has already set off for Zuoer. I'm afraid we won't be able to catch up. Wait another 2 days first. The people that Overseer has hired will arrive then. When the time comes, you can follow them. All right. Zhou Wen had no other choice but to agree. This world is changing too quickly, but my growth in strength is just too slow. Zhou Wen recently had an increasing feeling that his improvement was too slow. However, he didn't realize that typical college students who advanced to the legendary stage before they graduated from university were considered fast growers. He had already advanced to the legendary stage in his first year of university, so he was indeed a little too impatient at wanting to advance to the epic stage. Even with a background like the 6 families with virtually unlimited resources supporting them, it would be difficult for students to advance to the epic stage in just a few years. I wish to slowly advance too, but this world isn't waiting for anyone. Zhou Wen sighed inwardly. He went to the golden flying ant once again. This time, Zhou Wen used Ghost Bride, hoping to use her ability to be immune to physical attacks. He wanted to see if she could pass through the white cocoon to see what was inside them. When he arrived, Ghost Bride was actually able to ignore the golden flying ant's attack. This delighted Zhou Wen greatly, but just as she was about to pass through the white cocoon, she was repelled by the cocoon. Is it still impossible? Zhou Wen was somewhat disappointed. All he could do was continue grinding Overlord snakes, hoping that he could get one with Overlord's spear as soon as possible. Zhou Wen, can you do me a favor? Hui Haifeng suddenly asked while he was studying at Wang Mingyuon's place. What is it? Zhou Wen asked in surprise. Can you practice movement techniques with me? In the past, I've been too focused on strength and techniques, but I neglected my movement techniques. When we went to kill the spider, Zia and you showed me the importance of movement techniques. I want to practice them, but it's not an ordinary technique. I developed a technique that's most suitable for me, so I need someone to help me, Hui Haifeng said. I can do it in the next 2 days. However, I might have something to attend to in 2 days and have to leave the school, Zhou Wen said. It should be done in 2 days. I don't have any clue, so I need to find a direction in actual combat. It shouldn't take too long, Hui Haifeng said. Alright, let's begin now, Zhou Wen agreed. When he got to the training field with Hui Haifeng had Zhou Wen attack him with all his might, but all he did was block or dodge. Hui Haifeng was rather well-rounded. He was a person with a relatively balanced development, but in terms of movement techniques, he was weaker than Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen pushed Dragon Gate Fairy skill to its limits and constantly attacked Hui Haifeng. Hui Haifeng seemed to have learned a few movement techniques that constantly swapped. Yet, he was still constantly struck by Zhou Wen. However, Hui Haifeng had improved very quickly. After familiarizing himself with Zhou Wen's movement techniques, the number of times he was hit began to decrease. The progress was extremely smooth, but after reaching a certain level, Hui Haifeng could no longer dodge Zhou Wen's attacks. No matter how hard he tried, there was no progress. The pressure on me isn't enough. Faster, Hui Haifeng said. Alright. Zhou Wen switched to Godfiend era and used his levitation ability to push his Dragon Gate Fairy skill to an even higher level. He flew across the sky and attacked Hui Haifeng from all directions, making it even harder for Hui Haifeng to dodge. The number of times he was hit increased. Hui Haifeng gritted his teeth as he constantly changed his movement techniques. The number of palm imprints on his body increased, but he had no intention of giving up. He continued to persist, hoping to find a path that was most suitable for him to break through while under heavy pressure. It's useless. It's still useless. My speed isn't as fast as Zhou Wen's. Nor do I have such powerful aerial combat capabilities as Zhou Wen. What can I do? Hui Haifeng didn't feel vexed over his flaws. Instead, he was searching for a chance to resolve the problem with his own abilities. Under Zhou Wen's relentless assault, Hui Haifeng gradually found a path that belonged to him. Suddenly, Hui Haifeng seemed to come to a realization. His movement technique changed drastically, one completely different from the movement technique he had used earlier. It was quite a bizarre change. Rather than saying that it was a movement technique, it was more accurate to say that it was a variation in the footwork in a fist technique. Hui Haifeng's movements were very tiny, but such tiny movements were very fast, like an explosive impulse. This kind of movement couldn't be maintained at high speeds, but the continuous impulse movement caused Hui Haifeng's trajectory to become unpredictable. Article 245 of 1597. Haha, I've finally found a suitable movement technique for myself. No matter how fast I am, I can't compare to you and Zia. I can't maintain a high speed like the two of you, but I can use my explosive impulse to accelerate myself to a speed faster than the two of you for a moment. And I have good endurance and can sustain such continuous impulses. This is the most suitable movement technique for me. Hui Haifeng laughed heartily. It's indeed a pretty good movement technique, Zhou Wen praised. Hui Haifeng wrapped his arm around Zhou Wen's shoulder and said, this movement technique was completed with your help. Half the credit goes to you. I'll give you half of the naming rights. You and I can think of one word and we'll use it as the name of this movement technique. In the future, when it becomes famous, your name will definitely be recorded in history. There's no need. I'm just a sparring partner, Zhou Wen said with a shrug. It's different. My movement technique was inspired by your movement technique. Half its name has to come from you. Come, quickly think of a name for it. I can't wait to perfect it. Hui Haifeng took out a piece of paper and a pen and handed them to Zhou Wen. He asked him to have a think before he wrote a single word. Although Zhou Wen found Hui Haifeng's method of naming rather ridiculous, he thought for a moment under Hui Haifeng's insistence and wrote the word true on the piece of paper. After the two of them finished writing, they unfolded the pieces of paper together and saw that there was also the word true on Hui Haifeng's paper. When they saw the words on the paper, they couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Hui Haifeng laughed. It looks like we're both like-minded and thought of the same thing. Let's do it this way. It won't be interesting to write another name. This movement technique shall be called double true. Double true. Double true. True double. This name sounds a little, Zhou Wen repeated it a few times before he realized that something was amiss. After Hui Haifeng said it out loud, he clearly realized this problem. However, he didn't mind it and said with a smile, double true movement technique doesn't sound nice, but since it's decided by fate, let's call it double true. With that said, Hui Haifeng ran off. He couldn't wait to head back and continue researching and perfecting the double true movement technique. Zhou Wen shook his head and said, Wang Mingyuan's disciples are all talented geniuses, but their personalities are weird. I originally thought Hui Haifeng was a normal person, but from the looks of it, he isn't very normal. And Sheng needed to do a lot of work. Not only was he in Tianzuo's adjutant, but he was also the Yin family's butler. He had to handle the matters of the military and the Yin family. Therefore, Sheng had to organize people to handle many matters. When he received a name list, his expression turned extremely odd. There were 3 names written on the list. One of them was Zhou Wen. These 3 names were specially written by Qin Wufu. And Tianzuo had also mentioned that he wanted to personally reward the 3. None of that was a problem, but one of the 3 names was Zhou Wen. Are you sure this list is correct? And Sheng looked at the intelligence officer in front of him and asked. He had to be sure of this matter, or else there would be a huge problem. Yes, many officers have seen the 3 of them before. We have also checked the surveillance footage of some shops nearby and compared them to the school's database. We have confirmed that it's the 3 of them. Furthermore, we have also brought a photo to show those officers. It's confirmed without a doubt that it's the 3 of them, the intelligence officer said with certainty. Very good. You did well. Go ahead and busy yourself. And Sheng looked at the name on the list and a strange smile appeared on his lips. He took some documents and got up to head to Tianzuo's office. Come in. And Tianzuo was handling some documents, clearly in a bad mood. He already had a headache over the various breakout creatures from the dimensional zones. Now that Ouyang Lan had gone to such a dangerous place, he was very worried. If it wasn't because there were too many problems in Luang and he couldn't split himself, he yearned to fly to Zuolu immediately and get Ouyang Lan back. However, he knew Ouyang Lan's temper very well. Even if he went, it would be impossible for her to return because his temper was inherited from her. He knew very well that no one could stop her once she made up her mind. Overseer, the list of students who have rendered meritorious services has been compiled. The 3 students who helped us destroy the spider wells have also been found. The commendation ceremony has already been prepared. Should we start as planned? And Sheng walked over and handed the document to Tianzuo. Act according to the plan. Go ahead and do it. And Tianzuo didn't look at the documents. Usually, such matters were handled by Sheng. He didn't think there would be any problems with such trivial matters. Yes. And Sheng took back the document and left Tianzuo's office. Zhou Wen was constantly grinding at Snake Cavern, but he hadn't had a mutated overlord snake drop with ever victorious. Therefore, he planned on inviting Wang Lu to try it out at Snake Cavern. Wang Lu was listening to music in the living room when she heard the doorbell ring. When she opened the door, she couldn't help but be surprised that Zhou Wen had actually knocked on her door. It was unbelievable. Wang Lu, how much money do I need to hire you to accompany me to the Snake Cavern to hunt dimensional creatures? Zhou Wen asked Wang Lu. You want to hire me? Wang Lu was stunned before looking at Zhou Wen with interest. Yes, if it's possible, we can head to the Snake Cavern now. Zhou Wen nodded with certainty. You should know that I don't lack money, right? Wang Lu said with a smile. Zhou Wen was slightly disappointed. Sorry for disturbing you. With that said, Zhou Wen prepared to leave when Wang Lu hurriedly said, Hold on. It's not impossible for you to hire me, but I don't want money. I have one condition. What condition? Zhou Wen asked. I want to go shopping tonight. Be my lackey and help me carry things, Wang Lu said. No problem, I'm going to the snake cavern to kill the mutated overlord snakes. I wish to use your luck to have a mutated overlord snake egg drop. Zhou Wen shared his motives. It shouldn't be a big problem as long as there's a mutated overlord snake there, said Wang Lu with a smile. Zhou Wen and Wang Lu headed to Dragon Gate Grotto where Snake Cavern was. Zhou Wen was already very familiar with the place, so killing overlord snakes was very simple for him. He only wished to meet a mutated overlord snake. After all, it wasn't something that could be found at any time. If there wasn't a mutated overlord snake, it wouldn't matter how lucky Wang Lu was. However, Zhou Wen had clearly underestimated Wang Lu's luck. Not long after they entered Snake Cavern, they saw an overlord snake that resembled black jade. It was a mutated overlord snake. One double in Chinese lingo can mean clueless/idiot. So flipping the name becomes true idiot. Article 246 of 1597. Zhou Wen was delighted when he saw the mutated overlord snake as he ordered the Saber Shield Knight to charge forward. The Saber Shield Knight had a life providence of offense and defense. Furthermore, his shield skills, saber skills, and battle aura skills were very powerful, making him the best at restraining overlord snakes. The mutated overlord snake charged over as the Saber Shield Knight activated the everlasting shield. The cross symbol on his shield immediately lit up with a holy radiance, as though it was a holy light that enveloped his entire body and his mount. He used the shield technique to block the mutated overlord snake's attack before chopping down with the saber in his right hand with cross sword beam to kill it. This was what the Saber Shield Knight had always done. However, this time, the mutated overlord snake slammed into the shield, tearing it apart. It opened its mouth and bit down on the Saber Shield Knight's head. Zhou Wen hurriedly got the demonized general to charge forward as he struck out with Astral Fist, sending the mutated overlord snake's body flying out. The demonized general and the Saber Shield Knight attacked the overlord snake together, but they were still at a tiny disadvantage. When its tail swept, whatever was in its way directly shattered. Could it be that this is the ever-victorious skill? Zhou Wen was delighted instead of shocked. The mutated overlord snakes he had encountered in the game weren't that powerful. Baby Tiger, attack, bite it. Wang Lu let her Lucky Baby Tiger help. The abilities of Lucky Baby Tiger were considered inferior amongst the epic stage, but it was naturally much stronger than the legendary stage. It was very agile as it dodged the attack from the overlord snake. It pounced forward and bit down on the overlord snake's neck, splitting it into two pieces. Zhou Wen allowed his pet to withstand the attacks of the other overlord snakes while he took bamboo blade and peeled off the overlord snake's head. Immediately, he saw two crystals inside. One crystal was obviously a stats crystal, while the other was a black metal egg. It was none other than the mutated overlord snake egg. Mission accomplished. Remember to be my lackey tonight, said Wang Lu with a cheeky smile. Alright, I'll definitely be there on time. Zhou Wen put away his companion egg and rushed out of Snake Cavern with Wang Lu. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen hurriedly used his cell phone to snap the mutated overlord snake companion egg. Mutated overlord snake, legendary. Life providence, born overlord. Strength, 20. Speed, 19. Constitution, 20. Primordial energy, 16. Talent skill, Death Rap, Devourer, ever victorious. Companion form, Spear. Zhou Wen was delighted to see this. Indeed, it was an excellent grade mutated overlord snake. Not only did it possess the ever victorious skill, but it also had another skill, Devourer. It was much better than the one which dropped for him previously. Luck is indeed useful. From the looks of it, I have to think of a way to have a Lucky Baby Tiger drop. Zhou Wen already had the urge to head to the Binyang cave to grind for one. He now had the two epic skills, Ghost Steps and Transcendent Flying Immortal. He also had the Overlord Spear with Ever Victorious. There was likely a chance for him to kill the weakest epic tiger alone. However, what was most pressing for Zhou Wen was still the white cocoon protected by the golden flying ant, therefore he headed to Ant City to try it out first. After hatching the mutated Overlord Snake, it didn't take long for a black metal spear that was about 12 feet long to appear in Zhou Wen's hand. Its entire body was made of black metal and the two blades on the spear emitted a cold glow that sent shivers down one's spine. Zhou Wen had never practiced with spears before, but he had a legendary primordial energy skill penetrating pierce. It possessed decent armor-piercing strength which suited Zhou Wen's current use. He waved his Overlord Spear a few times to familiarize himself with its weight and center of mass before putting it away and opening the Ant Nest Instance Dungeon. After storming all the way to Ant City, Zhou Wen couldn't be bothered clearing the ordinary flying ants and armored ants. He allowed his pets to battle the ant horde before taking Truth Listener and Ghost Bride to the golden flying ant's nest at the top. The golden flying ant lunged forward at an astonishing speed. Zhou Wen used Ghost Bride to lure the golden flying ant while he used Ghost Steps to instantly charge to the side of the white cocoon. With the golden flying ant being led to the other side by Ghost Bride and how Zhou Wen's ghost steps were ridiculously fast, making him no way slower than the golden flying ant, it was already too late for it to rush back. Zhou Wen held the Overlord Spear and used Penetrating Pierce. At the same time, he unleashed all his strength and stabbed the white cocoon. The spear's blade chafed against the white cocoon, making metal grinding sounds. It was harsh to the ears. Zhou Wen was alarmed. The Overlord spear's tip had only stabbed a few inches in, failing to completely penetrate the cocoon. The golden flying ant had already flashed over. It released golden beams at the blood-colored avatar furiously. The silver wings on the back of the blood-colored avatar flapped as Zhou Wen used ghost steps again and charged out of the nest. At the same time, he ordered Ghost Bride to attack the white cocoon to attract the golden flying ant's attention. The golden flying ant was fooled as expected. It stopped chasing after Zhou Wen and charged at Ghost Bride. Golden beams of light shot through Ghost Bride's body, but they didn't injure her. Zhou Wen couldn't help but sigh. The strength of a dimensional creature isn't absolute. If one's attributes and skills are restrained, even an inferior companion beast might not necessarily be useless. Using Dao Body to keep replenishing his primordial energy, Zhou Wen charged into the nest and stabbed the same spot again. However, he failed to completely pierce through the white cocoon and only broke a portion of it. Zhou Wen's attack was augmented by Ever Victorious and the armor-piercing strength of Penetrating Pierce, making the destructive power extremely terrifying. Yet, the cocoon remained resilient in a shocking manner. After exiting the nest once again, Zhou Wen used the same trick to constantly entice the golden flying ant and repeatedly attack the white cocoon. He repeated it dozens of times until Zhou Wen struck the same spot on the white cocoon again and felt the tip of the spear lighten as though he had penetrated half the spear into it. It penetrated. Zhou Wen was delighted as he hurriedly pulled out his spear. When Zhou Wen pulled out the Overlord spear, he saw a beam shoot out from the hole. It was orange-red in color and looked extremely bizarre, but it didn't seem to have any lethal force. It was like the light of an electric lamp. Zhou Wen glanced at the white cocoon's hole and saw that it was entirely orange inside. And the source of the orange-red light was actually a curled creature. The creature looked a little like a human. Its body was curled up and its hands hugged its legs as it curled into a ball. Its orange long hair covered most of its body. On his head, there was a pair of strange feelers, and on his back, there was a layer of translucent thin wings. The thin wings were very soft and looked like they hadn't fully matured. Inside the white cocoon is indeed a dimensional creature, but it doesn't look anything like an ant. Zhou Wen dodged the golden flying ant's angry attack as he thought to himself. Article 247 of 1597. Zhou Wen timed his opportunity and once again charged to the side of the white cocoon. He thrust the spear in again, but this time he stabbed straight at the strange creature inside the cocoon. Ding! Zhou Wen heard a crisp sound like the sound of jade colliding. The spear tip failed to stab into the supple-looking skin. Instead, it felt like it had collided with a metal wall. So hard. Zhou Wen was alarmed as he began to suspect the level of the dimensional creature within the white cocoon. However, at this point, it was impossible for Zhou Wen to give up. All he could do was try again and again, hoping to use repeated attacks to tear through the creature's skin. Unfortunately, it was clearly futile. The continuous attacks failed to break through the creature's skin. It was as if it was an indestructible piece of rock. At this point, how could Zhou Wen be willing to give up? He gritted his teeth and activated the power of Sigh of the King. The strength, primordial energy skills, primordial energy art of a life providence was different. To the typical person, it was a different kind of strength mode. However, to Zhou Wen, be it in-game or in reality, using the Sigh of the King was a very dangerous matter. Once Life Providence was activated, not only would the blood-colored avatar in the game be affected, he would even be affected by the power of the Sigh of the King in reality. If it wasn't used properly, Zhou Wen would end up exploding to his death. Therefore, Zhou Wen wasn't willing to use the Sigh of the King if he didn't have a reason to do so. Even if he could stop in time, he needed to lie in bed for a few days before his body and bones would slowly heal. The pain and itchiness he ended up suffering was unimaginable to others. Having used the Sigh of the King twice, Zhou Wen already had a taste of the feeling. If it was possible, he was unwilling to attempt it a third time. But now, he had no choice but to use it again. With Overlord Spear with Ever Victorious unable to injure the creature within the white cocoon, it was unknown when he would have the ability to kill the creature inside. A terrifying force instantly descended upon Zhou Wen, causing the blood-colored avatar's strength to surge. He didn't dare to delay at all. With ghost steps and transcendent flying immortal, the Overlord Spear in his hand brought with it the terrifying power that tore through space. Instantly, it stabbed into the white cocoon once again. When the spear beam struck the creature's skin, it shattered and scattered like glass shards. When the spear tip stabbed into the skin, it finally broke through its fair skin and stabbed a little deeper. However, it was just a little. It was probably less than a centimeter from the tip of the spear. This left Zhou Wen alarmed. Although the Sigh of the King's power had only just been activated, it was enough to kill an existence like the Ghost King back in the Yin-Yang world. And with such strength, coupled with the fact that he had attacked with Overlord Spears Ever Victorious, he had only barely torn open the creature's flesh. This made Zhou Wen suspect that the dimensional creature in the cocoon might very well be at the true mythical stage as spoken of in legends. Although Banana Fairy and Truth Listener were also at the mythical stage, they were only considered half-mythicals. They might be able to advance to the mythical stage in the future, but that was not the case now. At the instant the tip of the spear stabbed into the flesh, the life form in the cocoon twitched. His head slowly turned, revealing part of his side profile. He looked flawless, like a figure that had walked out of a painting. An orange-red eye also revealed itself as it stared at the blood-colored avatar through the hole bored through by the spear. The eye exuded an indescribable diabolical feeling. Its pupil was like an orange gem without any impurities. However, with that gaze, even Zhou Wen, who was outside the game, had goosebumps. Bam! Almost at the same time, a force blasted out of the cocoon, instantly sending the Overlord spear and the blood-colored avatar flying. The blood-colored avatar flew right across Ant City's sky like a cannonball before slamming into a stone wall. Although the blood-colored avatar didn't die immediately, Zhou Wen could sense that all the bones in its body had broken. The pain inundated Zhou Wen's nerves, but this time, the bones weren't broken by Sai of the King but by the terrifying force. That must be a mythical creature. A mere glance without any physical activity was enough to quake the blood-colored avatar that had activated the Sai of the King to the brink of death. Such power was just too terrifying. Clang. Nas. The Overlord spear that had been snapped into several pieces slammed into the stone wall. The outcome of the Overlord spear was worse than Zhou Wen's. After it snapped, it immediately vanished and dissipated like ash. It left Zhou Wen heartbroken. It hadn't been easy for him to obtain the Overlord spear with ever victorious, but it was destroyed just like that. Although this was a game where a companion beast could be revived, Zhou Wen's first reaction when he saw the Overlord spear destroyed was a heartache. But as the Overlord spear disappeared, a drop of sparkling orange blood dripped down from the tip of the spear. It was a gem the size of a grain of rice. It just remained suspended in midair. Discovered mythical blood essence. Absorb it. With the notification popping in-game, Zhou Wen didn't hesitate and hurriedly chose to absorb it. The blood-colored avatar stretched out its hand with great difficulty. The Sai of the King had already been deactivated, and the blood-colored avatar's bones were almost completely fractured. Both his arms and fingers were bent as he stretched out with great difficulty to touch that drop of blood. At the same time, the game screen suddenly turned black. Zhou Wen immediately had the urge to curse. The blood-colored avatar had failed to hold on and died right at that moment. If the blood was gone from the respawn, Zhou Wen's efforts and hard work would have all been in vain. Just as Zhou Wen was about to drip his blood and revive the blood-colored avatar, he suddenly felt a strange power flow out of the mysterious phone, instantly filling his entire body. Due to the heavy burden of using the Sai of the King, he had already shown signs of internal bleeding in several spots. Under the nourishment of the strange energy, he gradually snapped to his senses and recovered at an extremely fast speed. In just a few seconds, Zhou Wen's damaged body returned to normal. As for the strange power, it remained fused into his body, giving him an indescribable sense of comfort. He felt as though all his cells had been revived, as though he had been given a new lease of life. After a long while, this feeling gradually disappeared. After everything returned to normal, Zhou Wen hurriedly dripped a drop of blood onto the mysterious phone, allowing the blood-colored avatar to revive as he carefully read the blood-colored avatar's information. With this look, Zhou Wen immediately realized that his primordial energy stat had reached 21 points. Just like before, there was an additional word behind his primordial energy value. Taboo. Zhou Wen looked at the word, but he didn't understand what it meant. He thought to himself, strength has the postfix of sun because it absorbed the god power crystal of the sun god. Speed has trajectory as its postfix because it absorbed the god power crystal of the god of trajectory. Could it be that there's also a god in the cocoon? Is his name the god of taboos? Zhou Wen could only make this guess, but he was unable to confirm it. Article 248 of 1597. The blood he obtained from the cocoon allowed Zhou Wen to see the hope of advancing to the epic stage. He was just short of his constitution reaching 21 points. Now, Zhou Wen was aware of two locations where white cocoons could be found. One of them was at the nest of the chick's mother. Zhou Wen didn't dare go there. Even Ah Shang didn't dare put up any resistance. Even if he were to activate Sai of the King, he would probably only be courting death. Besides, now that the chick was with Zhou Wen and had helped him before, Zhou Wen couldn't bring himself to touch the white cocoon that the giant bird was protecting. Then the only one left is the white cocoon that's protected by the worm under the old dragon cave. Zhou Wen felt a headache coming on when he thought of the worm. The worm was obviously much more powerful than the golden flying ant. Perhaps the worm itself was a mythical creature to begin with. If he wanted to tear through the cocoon and obtain the blood of the living creature within, he might as well have a fight with the worm and die a faster death. Although he knew that there was no chance, Zhou Wen was bent on trying. As expected, before he even reached the stone pillar, the worm was jolted awake as it opened its mouth and roared, instantly killing the blood-colored avatar. Even Ghost Bride's soul body wasn't spared. Her soul was shattered by the dragon's roar. How can this be obtained? It's impossible. Unless my body can withstand the power of the Sai of the King and allow its full powers to manifest, only then might there still be a sliver of a chance. Zhou Wen put down his phone, having no intention of trying it a second time. It was useless even if he tried. They were not at the same level. In front of absolute strength, everything was in vain. Zhou Wen, where are you? I've been waiting for you all day. Wang Lu called, her voice sounding rather angry. Sorry, I'll be there soon. Only then did Zhou Wen recall that he still needed to be Wang Le's lackey that evening. He hurriedly washed his face and left the building. What's wrong with you? You're a man, and you're late. You are in no way a gentleman, Wang Lu said angrily. I'm sorry. My bad. Zhou Wen felt that there was no way of explaining himself because he had indeed done something wrong. All he could do was lower his head and admit his mistake. Since it's your fault, you have to accept punishment. Do you have any objections? Wang Lu said. No. Zhou Wen shook his head. That's what you said. You are not to go back on your word. Wang Lu narrowed her eyes. Apart from committing murder, arson, and immoral acts, you can punish me for anything. Zhou Wen could only accept it. It's not that serious. Follow me. Wang Lu beamed even more, happy as she led Zhou Wen out of the school. Zhou Wen originally believed that randomly leaving Sunset College was a privilege of people like Sheng. Even Li Xuan couldn't casually leave the school, but Wang Lu had easily led Zhou Wen out. It's still good to be privileged. Zhou Wen sighed inwardly. There was already a car waiting outside the school. Wang Lu led Zhou Wen to the car and they headed for the biggest commercial street in Luoang. Qin Zhuo's Zhuan crystal shop was also on the street. Wang Lu did not go to the crystal shop. She went to a store selling all kinds of cosmetics and clothes. Zhou Wen couldn't understand why Wang Lu was buying these things. Sunset College was a partially militaristic school. Back on campus, students were only allowed to wear uniforms. The school uniforms were basically simple military uniforms. Moreover, the college didn't allow students to put on makeup. It was alright to secretly put on some light makeup, but if it was a little more obvious, the student council would find out and carry out disciplinary action. Although Wang Lu was one of the elites of the college, Zhou Wen hadn't seen her wear makeup when he saw her in school. He really didn't know what those things were bought for. However, Wang Lu was very happy as she flitted through the various shops. Soon, Zhou Wen became a humanoid rack with various bags hanging over his body. They were all things Wang Lu had bought. Does it look good? Wang Lu walked out of the fitting room and walked around Zhou Wen in a lovely dress. She posed in a beautiful way as she asked Zhou Wen. Such clothes aren't suitable for practice or battle, right? Zhou Wen said as he looked at the various cloth decorations hanging from the clothes. Wang Lu glared at Zhou Wen fiercely. I'm happy and it's all out of my own free will. This, and this. Give me one of the same color. Hence, Zhou Wen had a lot more bags on him. Although with his physique, it wasn't a problem for him to carry more, he just couldn't understand the point of buying them. The clothes looked identical, just in different colors. After shopping for nearly 4 hours and having 2 sumptuous meals in the middle, Wang Lu was finally satisfied. She went back to school with bags of all shapes and sizes. Zhou Wen took the items into Wang Le's building and was about to leave when Wang Lu stopped him. Are you leaving just like that? Wang Lu asked Zhou Wen. Didn't I already fulfill my promise? Zhou Wen looked at Wang Lu in puzzlement. The promise is fulfilled, but the punishment for being late hasn't been done yet. Don't tell me you want to go back on your word. Wang Le's eyes were filled with doubt about Zhou Wen's character. Of course not. Tell me how you would like to punish me, Zhou Wen said as he spread out his hands. Actually, it's very simple. I only bought the cosmetics looking at the color palette. I can't see the real effects. Help me try them, Wang Lu said with a cheeky smile as she took out a lipstick. You want me to try this? Zhou Wen immediately widened his eyes. You want to go back on your word? Wang Le's questioning eyes became more obvious. No. Zhou Wen gritted his teeth as the words seemed to be squeezed out through his teeth. That's good. Sit tight. Don't move. Wang Lu was immediately delighted as she took out all the new cosmetics she had bought and swept them across Zhou Wen's face. Zhou Wen sat there motionless, feeling as though he was sitting on pins and needles. Always angering me. Today, I'll let you know what happens when you anger me. A devilish tale seemed to grow behind Wang Lu. When it was almost midnight and Jing returned from the device room. When she passed by Zhou Wen's building, she subconsciously took a glance and saw that it wasn't lit. Just as she was about to return to her own building, she heard the door open to the building beside hers. A figure walked out. And Jing originally thought nothing of it, imagining it was Wang Lu, but to her surprise the figure walked to Zhou Wen's building and entered the yard's door. Zhou Wen. And Jing couldn't help but be taken aback when she saw that it was Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen also saw in Jing, but his relationship with her was never that great. He nodded slightly as a form of greeting before opening the door and entering his building. Just a few results to show for and he's already so brazen. Not only does he game every day, but he's also fooling around in the dorm of a girl in the middle of the night. I really wonder what Grandpa and Mom see in him. And Jing felt extremely unhappy as her good mood instantly vanished. Article 249 of 1597. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen entered Dragon Gate Grotto's instance dungeon and prepared to grind for the lucky tiger. Wang Lu had allowed Zhou Wen to realize the magic of the luck stat. Therefore, he wished to grind for a lucky baby tiger to increase his luck stat. It would be easier to take the lucky baby tiger along with him if he wanted any companion egg to drop in the future. The only problem now was that Zhou Wen needed to hatch an epic companion egg at the legendary stage. It would be somewhat difficult. Zhou Wen didn't know how Wang Lu had managed it. He planned on trying to use the Dao body's rapid recovery of primordial energy. The tiger was relatively weak to begin with, so the amount of primordial energy he needed probably would be reduced. Perhaps he could give it a try. In reality, the tiger was in high demand, but there was no one in game to vie for it besides Zhou Wen. After Zhou Wen arrived at Bainyang Cave, he quickly found the tiger. Without another word, he summoned his overlord spear and circled to the back of the tiger with ghost steps and stabbed it in the rectum. The tiger's reaction wasn't slow. With a flying pounce, it dodged the fate of having its rectum torn through. In return, its tail lashed out like a steel whip. Zhou Wen had already studied it thoroughly. As he dodged sideways, he thrust out again, stabbing the tiger's thin waist. The overlord spear finally stabbed into the tiger's waist. With ever victorious showing its effect, the tiger let out a tragic cry when the spear stabbed through its skin. A blood hole opened up and its pelvis was damaged. With its movements greatly restricted, Zhou Wen quickly finished it off. This was the first time he had killed an epic creature alone in game. Although it was the weakest epic, it gave Zhou Wen a sense of accomplishment. However, it was very unlikely that the tiger would drop a companion egg. Zhou Wen didn't expect to have the lucky baby tiger drop on his first try, he could only try in passing. It wasn't something he could keep respawning. This was because there was only one tiger in game every time, just like reality. After Zhou Wen killed it, he had to drip his blood to respawn, allowing the game's instance dungeon to be refreshed before he could kill the tiger again. It would be such a waste. Zhou Wen would kill the baby tiger every time he dripped his blood for respawning. Then, he would go elsewhere to grind for companion eggs or explore new instance dungeons. He waited until he died before respawning to have a chance of killing the baby tiger again. I wonder if there are any other companion beasts that can add to my luck stat. When Zhou Wen was free, he went online to search for more information. He discovered that luck stat was indeed rare. Although other companion beasts had similar effects just like Little Tiger, they were targets that were vied for by many. It was difficult to obtain them. Besides the baby tiger, the other known companion beasts with a luck stat were extremely powerful epic creatures. Their combat strength was many times stronger than the lucky baby tigers. While checking on the information, Zhou Wen also saw another companion beast with the opposite luck stat. It was born with bad luck or, in other words, filled with misfortune. One of the most famous ones in the East District was Tai Sui. If one had this companion beast, not only would it be the case of not having any luck with drops, but even buying a packet of instant noodles would come without any seasoning packets. Entering a dimensional zone would definitely result in trouble. It was an essential pet if one wanted to have a death wish. The last epic expert who had obtained Tai Sui originally believed that he had obtained a powerful companion beast. He had even shared the information he gained on his WeChat moments to flaunt it, but he ended up dying in a dimensional zone the next day. Who the hell would hatch such a companion beast? Zhou Wen carefully read the description of Tai Sui and remembered its appearance. It would be truly troublesome if he were to accidentally hatch it in the future. Just as they were about to continue grinding instance dungeons, the school sent a notice to all the students requesting that they gather at the field. It was unknown what had happened. When he arrived at the field, he saw Wang Fei and his classmates already lined up. Li Xuan was waving at him. Zhou Wen hurriedly walked over and stood behind Li Xuan as he asked, "Li Xuan, what happened at the school? Why are all the students suddenly gathered?" Such situations were rare in Sunset College. It focused more on pragmatic education, so it was rare for it to organize any student assemblies. I have no idea. I was sleeping soundly when I was awoken by a message. I don't know what happened either, Li Xuan said as he spread out his hands. Soon, all the teachers and students gathered. Zhou Wen found it odd that there were even rows of soldiers on the field. Although there were troops stationed on campus, they only guarded the school's entrance or special places like the Dimensional Zone's entrances. They rarely interacted with students. Yet, the soldiers were participating in the student assembly held by the college. Moreover, the soldiers' uniforms seemed different from those of the ordinary soldiers. It seemed like they were not the usual soldiers in the college. After the managing vice-chancellor went on stage to say a few words, Zhou Wen and the rest of the students realized that the student assembly was to commend the students who had contributed when the sky spider wreaked havoc. Zhou Wen didn't pay much attention to this because he, Hui Haifeng, and Zhang Zia hadn't reported their names. The school didn't include them, so even the rewards had nothing to do with them. It wasn't that Zhou Wen and company weren't willing to accept the rewards, but that they originally believed that the credits given weren't much. The trio weren't people who lacked credits, so they were too lazy to report it. When the time came, the military would have to verify it, and it would be extremely troublesome. Since Zhang Zia and Hui Haifeng found it troublesome and Zhou Wen didn't have any strong desire for credits, the three of them hadn't bothered reporting. If he had known that there would be actual material rewards, Zhou Wen would have reported his name no matter what. But now, it was too late for regrets. As Zhou Wen was thinking about this, he saw a few military officers arrive in the field. They were being escorted by soldiers. The managing vice-chancellor and the school's upper management hurriedly stood up to welcome them, inviting the leading officer to the main seat. Wow, it's Overseer In. He's so handsome. I've been in school for 3 years, but this is the first time I've seen the overseer in person. He's even more valiant and imposing than the legends. It's nothing to get excited about. We Luang locals often get to see him. Instantly, there was a commotion among the students. And Tianzuo was like a god of war in Luang. Many of the students believed that he was a target and an idol to aim for in cultivation. In fact, a large part of the reason many outstanding students chose Sunset College was because it was the in-family school and in Tianzuo had also graduated here. Zhou Wen didn't feel anything special when he saw in Tianzuo. He treated him like a passerby. And Tianzuo had acute senses. Even among the thousands of students, he immediately sensed Zhou Wen's spot. However, he didn't even look at him, as though Zhou Wen didn't exist in his books. And Sheng nodded at Zhou Wen with a smile, but the smile seemed to carry a deeper meaning. Article 250 of 1597. The process of the assembly was very simple. There weren't many bigwigs speaking. Only Tianzuo spoke a few words. Although he didn't say a lot, his oomph left many students boiling with excitement. They wished they could join the army and fight to protect their homeland. Many girls even had the urge to follow Tianzuo to battle on the battlefield, even if they died for him. Even Zhou Wen had to admit that Tianzuo was the kind of person who was born with the charisma of a leader. If someone else were to say the same words, it would only appear awkward and pretentious. However, Tianzuo's delivery was infectious. He had a convincing charm, but Zhou Wen found it odd regardless. Following that, it was the awards ceremony for the students who had helped the army. All of them were named and invited on stage to receive their awards and military honors. Zhou Wen listened for quite a while but didn't hear his name. It wasn't unexpected. And Tianzuo was in a rather good mood today. Although he had had many troubles to deal with recently, he was in a better mood after seeing so many outstanding students at Sunset College. These people would imbue the army with fresh blood in the future. And Tianzuo was waiting for the 3 most outstanding students' turn and was prepared to personally decorate them with the medals. Overseer, the rewards for the other students have been distributed. Only the 3 students with outstanding contributions are left. Do you want to personally announce them? And Sheng came to Tianzuo's side and handed a script to him. All right. And Tianzuo received the script and stood up from his chair before walking to the stage. This was a very good opportunity to promote the military. And Tianzuo hoped that more students would be inclined to join the military in the future. This was one of the reasons why he had personally come to hand out the awards. I'm very relieved that there are so many outstanding students in my alma mater. While the students from other colleges are still studying hard, you have already grown to become a cornerstone of the league. On the battlefield, you poured your blood, using your bodies to create a steel wall for our siblings, parents, and elders. You have not let down the name of Sunset College. And Tianzuo read the script written by Sheng and found it somewhat odd. It didn't seem to be his normal style. This fellow has been lazing off again. He must have gotten a subordinate to pen it. With this thought in mind, Tianzuo took a glance at the script before continuing. He had a photographic memory. Just one glance was enough for him to memorize the entire contents of the piece of paper in his head. There was no need for him to continue reading from the script. Among excellent students like you, 3 of you have made me proud. They aren't afraid of death, nor are they afraid of danger. They went deep into the spider's nest and destroyed the source of the disaster, saving the lives of countless citizens. They used actions to prove their excellence, and, as a man, I'm glad that Sunset College has such students. I'm also proud that there are such men among humanity. Seeing them makes me see the League's future. It's a bright and glorious future, and Tianzuo was almost done reading the contents of the first page, so he flipped to the second page and took another look. The content on the second page was very simple. There were only 3 names. And Tianzuo continued, let me invite these 3 outstanding students up on stage. I want to personally decorate them with a medal. Everyone, please remember their names. All of us should be proud of them. These 3 students are Hui Haifeng, Zhang Zia, Zhou Wen. When he said the last name, Tianzuo's eyes glared at Sheng as if he was shooting daggers at him with an extremely fierce killing intent. If looks could kill, Sheng would have been torn apart. However, Sheng lowered his head as if he had not seen anything as he concentrated on taking notes. When Zhou Wen heard his name, he was slightly taken aback before his expression turned extremely odd. The words that had just been said left him feeling a little odd. Furthermore, it came from Tianzuo's mouth, making him find it even stranger. And Jing was stunned when she heard Zhou Wen's name. She couldn't believe that Tianzuo would use such words to describe Zhou Wen, much less believe that he was one of the 3. Was the person that the overseer mentioned really Zhou Wen? Could it be someone sharing the same name? It wasn't only Jing who didn't believe it, even Wang Fei found it unbelievable. She had no way of connecting the selfish and indifferent Zhou Wen, who was engrossed in games, with the outstanding student Tianzuo mentioned. However, Wang Fei soon realized that the school only had 1 student named Zhou Wen, so it was impossible for it to be someone else who shared the same name. Why are you still standing there in a daze? Hurry up and go on stage to accept the medal. This is a medal, not something meaningless like a commendation certificate. Furthermore, it's personally given out by Overseer In. I'm so envious. If I were to obtain such an honor, I could brag about it for 3 years, Li Xuan said as he nudged the dazed Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen hesitated for a moment. He didn't wish to have any interaction with Tianzuo. Furthermore, with their past, it made him feel uncomfortable standing in front of Tianzuo and letting him decorate him with a medal. What are you waiting for? Wang Fei came over and gave Zhou Wen a nudge. She felt gratified that she had taken Zhou Wen to Wang Mingyuan. Not long after, Zhou Wen had become so responsible and reliable. Although she found it a little unreal, this was her initial wish for Zhou Wen to go on stage to receive a medal. It was also a form of affirmation of her educational methods. It left her feeling honored. Seeing that Hui Haifeng and Song Zia were already on stage and how everyone was looking at him, Zhou Wen had no choice but to walk up to the podium. And Sheng walked over with a tray in hand. And Tianzuo expressionlessly helped Hui Haifeng and Song Zia wear the medals before rewarding each of them with a companion egg. When it was Zhou Wen's turn, and Tianzuo walked over with a deadpan expression. His eyes met Zhou Wen's for a second before they repelled like magnets of the same polarity. Their eyes subconsciously darted to the side. And Tianzuo instantly returned to normal as he expressionlessly put on Zhou Wen's medal. However, his actions were clearly much faster than when he decorated Hui Haifeng and Song Zia. Let us applaud Hui Haifeng, Song Zia, and Zhou Wen for their sheer fervor, bravery, and responsibility, and Sheng said. The applause below the stage boomed like thunder. Zhou Wen and Tianzuo felt uncomfortable standing together and their expressions were extremely stiff. And Sheng took a photo of the two of them and recorded this moment. After Zhou Wen left the venue, he immediately took off the medal and threw it into the chaos space. Then, he felt discomfort in his chest as he patted it, as though he was swatting away something. And Tianzuo got into the car and took off his white gloves, throwing them at Sheng. With a cold expression, he said, "Drive." Article 251 of 1597.